Hey Matt, how are you? Can you hear me, Matt?
What's up?
Hey, okay, we don't know where Rick is at right now. We don't know if there's an issue or something. But I'm gonna take over as host for right now with you. Um, and I would love for you to just start with just a little bit about who you are, introduce yourself, and let's begin.
Yeah, absolutely, man. What's your name?
Pierce. I
What's
am
up, Pierce?
yeah, I am the marketing director for Heart Atlanta Group. So I work specifically with Rick and Brett Caldwell and everyone involved with Heart Atlanta Group. So all the six market centers.
Awesome, man. Yeah, look at this huge team.
Absolutely.
Like this is a huge team.
Oh yeah, no, these so a lot of these are agents from out of all of our other market centers. So we have six that are run through the Heart of Atlanta Group. So we basically advertise this out to everyone. And I mean they want to get involved and know a little about who you are and what you have to offer. And we would love to hear about kind of how you got your start and how you started with your real estate team.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that. Hi, Constance. Good morning to you too. So the majority of the people on this show here are real estate agents. Is that
That
right?
is correct.
Awesome. Well, I got my real estate license in 2006. I came from copy machine sales. No, actually, the only job that I could get was to sell the toner cartridge that went inside the copy machine. It was a used toner cartridge. It wasn't even a new one. And so nobody cared about the copy machine or the toner cartridge at all. And I was super good at it. I sold a lot of toner cartridges. But then I said, man, let's do something cooler that people care about. And I was living in Colorado at the time. So I went up in the mountains and like just kind of tried to figure out what I was going to do next. And I said, man, I want to help people. I want to make a difference in people's lives. And I
Absolutely.
came up with real estate. So I said, people really care about their house. They care about their family. This is where their family lives. Man, I'm going to go sell homes and like make dreams come true. And so I said, okay, I'm going to sell some real estate. And I didn't know how to do that. But one of my cousins was in real estate in Charleston, South Carolina. That's where I live now. And I called her up and I was like, hey, Deb, I'm thinking about doing real estate. She's like, dude, fly to Charleston, come check it out. And so I flew to Charleston, and it's one of those things where you get off the plane, my foot stepped on the ground, and I just had this knowing. Like, man, I had this knowing this was going to be the place I met my wife and had my kids. Like, it was an insane confirmation from God that this was like the thing. So, yeah, I just packed up my stuff and moved cross country from Colorado to Charleston, South Carolina, and got in real estate.
Fantastic. Can you elaborate more on as you're growing up, kind of what were your influences and circumstances that defined your start?
Yeah, the influences and circumstances. So I'm not 1,000% sure what the question is.
So more of kind of who had a direct impact that led into you beginning this and how did that structure that going forward?
Yeah, so when I got into real estate in 2006, it was super easy. It was a market where everything was selling and there was a lot of inventory at the same time, a lot different than this market where everything's selling, but there's nothing to sell. And
Right.
so I was partying a lot and going out all like every night and having a bunch of fun. And I didn't have to be that good to sell a bunch of real estate. And then like 2007, 2008, things changed a lot. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden real estate got really, really, really hard. And nobody could sell and
Right.
everybody was upside down in their mortgage and nobody wanted to sell because their house was worth less than it used to be. So it was a hard market. The influence that like hit me the most was the book Think and Grow Rich. I
Okay.
read that book and it like changed everything. All of a sudden, Napoleon Hill said in that book, your thoughts create your reality. And I was like, what? No way, man. Like my thoughts are creating everything. And so I went down this huge path of like how to manifest my destiny, and watched the movie The Secret like 5 times, and then got the book The Secret, and then got her journal, and then got her flashcards. And every day I was like, I'm going to manifest the life of my dreams. And the number one person in our town was selling $36 million in real estate a year.
That's
And
phenomenal.
I took I took the leaderboard of the top agents, and I took my name from like number 587 and cut it out and pasted it over top of the top guy's name. And I put that on a vision board of, I'll sell $36 million in real estate in a single year, and I'll be number one. And then I started to build a team, and my team sold 36 million. And I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. And then I kept building my team from there. And then finally I got to the point where I sold 38 million myself, and our team sold 128 million. And I had finally like realized that vision that I had set all that time ago.
Absolutely.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Having
Go
been
ahead,
one of
Sean.
the survivors, fellow survivors of the 08 through 2011 market, right?
Yeah, man. Great
There's a lot
job.
there's some people on this call that don't even know what that world was. When you reflect back on that, what are the 3 things you learned in that market that still serve you well today?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you got to bust your ass, man. That was the best thing. Was there were way more realtors than there were houses that were selling, and they were thinning out like crazy. And I was like, man, the only way to survive right now is I got to outwork everybody. And so I just like learned an insane work ethic. I was like a ridiculous prospector. I was on the phone first thing every day. I stayed on the phone. I set appointments. I was at appointments till all night. And when the market turned, I kept those work habits, and all the agents had thinned out. I was like getting better and better and better and better. And then I kept working hard, and then we just dominated when the market got better. How about you, Sean?
So bust it.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I learned that there is business in every single market.
Yeah.
Right. So like the day the market crashed, I had 27 listings on the market. I was writing anniversary cards to some of those people, right? But you know, what you learn is you have to adapt with each market.
Right.
And like you said, like at that time, you got that piece of the pie. And as the market came back, that piece of the pie, you keep that piece of the pie, and it gets a little bit bigger, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
So yeah, work ethic was clearly one of them, but there's no bad market. There's always opportunity, right?
Right.
So in that realm, when you look at today's market, what are the opportunities you see coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, we started a flip division last year, and we are killing it with that.
Say that again.
Flipping homes.
Flipping homes. So you parlay, like your real estate license is a license to wealth that doesn't just come from selling property, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
But investing. Can you elaborate a little bit on your portfolio and what your personal investment strategies have served you well?
Yeah, I read the book Who Not How last year, and awesome book, by the way. And I realized that because I run a real estate team, that I've got a lot of who's that are out there like finding deals. So I just opened up. I said, hey, I'm going to put my money behind houses that we'll flip together as partners. You guys find the deal. We'll run it through, the parameters here that I've set up that make sense. And then we'll go into business together. And so we've got 10 of those properties, like either hitting the market or under construction right now. And just because we bought them a few months ago and the market is what it is, doesn't matter that we made them nicer. They're coming up in value just because of the market that we're in. So that's a huge opportunity in this particular market where there's still no homes on the market. There's still, you guys are in Atlanta, I'm in Charleston. People in the Northeast are like, I don't want to be here anymore. I can work from anywhere. Actually, I won't ever go back to work again because I'm retired. So there's this mass retirement. And so all these people are moving to Atlanta, which is going to be just going to blow up and keep blowing up. All these people are moving to the Southeast. They said 50% of all the country's growth in the next 20 years is going to be in the Southeast. Charleston happens to be the gateway to the Southeast with our port, and Atlanta happens to be like the mothership of the Southeast. So values in Atlanta and Charleston are just going to keep exploding, in my opinion. So it'd be a really good time to buy property. It looks like, oh man, prices here went up 18% last year. Yeah, I think they're going to go up 18% again. So it'd be a really good time to buy property.
So it's a season. So you're primarily in the flipping market more than the buy and hold.
Yep.
So being successful in that now, for people on this call, they're like, hey, I want to get some of that, right? What are the lessons you learned that you wish that you could share with someone so they don't have to learn them on their own?
I haven't had to learn any hard lessons because I started doing this in this inclining market.
Okay.
Yeah, cost creep for sure. We found houses that had termite damage that we didn't know existed. And every time we get in, there's like more costs than we expected. So that's like the lesson, but the market is just on this trajectory of up that it just covered up all those mistakes.
So how are you protecting against if the market goes flat or if the market shifts a little bit?
Yeah, what if it does?
Yeah. That's my question. What are you doing to hedge against that? Or are you right now? Are you just riding it because it's good?
Yeah, you know, it can always change. So I've got a governor, and a governor is that you say, okay, I'm comfortable with this amount of risk, which is how much cash I'm comfortable putting into it. You know, you can get, if you leverage your personal home, right? Take out an equity line on your personal home to pay for these flips and leverage yourself to the hilt, and then the market changes, you can lose your house.
Yeah.
Right. So that's not a good idea. So what I did is I funded this with cash. And I said, I'm only comfortable with this amount of cash. And so when that's used up and we're at that limit right now, we got to sell some stuff so that cash comes back and we can buy some more stuff. So that's the limit. And if the market changes, that, that cash is invested, I'll change strategy. We'll sell what we can. We'll hold what we can.
Yeah.
But we won't be in trouble because I'm setting it up to where, hey, things change. It doesn't take me out.
Do you have specific strategies for finding cash?
What do you,
like one of my principles is always like, you always start a business with somebody else's money, right? That's a great way to do it because you're not paying your rent with it. But do you have, when you first started, did you just have the cash or did you have to go find the cash? What was that like?
Yeah, it's just not my principle. My principle has never been borrow money. I saw Dave Ramsey come talk to my town in like 2009. And he's like, cut up your credit cards. And Dave Ramsey had all these chains wrapped around him and he was all bound up in all these chains. And he's like, you pay off one debt. He took a chain off. He's like, you pay off the car. He took a chain off. And then finally said, then you pay off your house. And he dropped these big heavy chains on the ground and he stepped forward and he said, that's FU money. Because now I don't have to make any money because my income is higher than my expenses because I have no expenses. I paid them all off. And I was like, dude, that is freaking smart. So I paid off my car that year, and then I paid off my wife's car and took all my credit cards and paid them off and then cut them up, and I never went back. So for me, that lifestyle of no expenses allowed me to accumulate cash where other people, they might spend all their cash because they're paying interest on it.
Gotcha. What about your tax ramifications? How are you 1031ing? Are you just factoring that in as a
dude? I suck at taxes. I'm actually, the government says I'm the best at taxes because I pay so many taxes. Yeah, I'm in GoBundance with Rick, and those guys, they shred me a new one when they look at my one sheet because of how much taxes I'm paying. So I've got a strategy to defer $300,000 in taxes this year. And the best way to do that, since we're real estate professionals, is by accelerated depreciation.
So talk a little bit about that, because that's a relatively new, and I've heard that at GoBundance as well.
Are you GoBundance member?
I have been there. I haven't been there the last 2 years, but that was the first time I ever heard it. Was 3 years ago in Austin. So
yeah.
So talk about accelerated depreciation.
Yeah, so the office that I'm in, I bought the office building my team works in, and then you can depreciate. If you get an engineering study, you can depreciate all this stuff that's like consumable. So other than the walls and the post of the building, like the toilets, the carpet, the light fixtures, the plumbing fixtures. An engineer can tell you all this stuff is going to wear out within 20 or 30 years. And you can take the depreciation on the cost of all that stuff in year one if you want. So I ended up getting 300,000 in write-offs of where I didn't have to pay 300,000 in taxes now, because I took it all in write-offs last year. So that was how I shielded taxes last year. My goal is to do that again. You can do that with single family homes. So I took a portfolio of 4 single family rental homes that I have, and each one of them I did accelerated depreciation on, a study on each one of those 4 homes, and it's 150,000 in savings. And then I'm going to buy some more personal investments, and I'll do the same thing. So my goal is to get to 300,000 in tax savings this year too. It's not savings though, it's deferral. When I go to sell that property, it recaptures back the depreciation that I took.
Yeah. A couple of questions in the chat page. Can you accelerate depreciation with duplexes? And can you
Absolutely. Killer. Yeah. Duplexes would be better than single family homes.
Because it's double, you can double the plumbing, you can double the.
Yes. Yeah. Quads would be awesome. Multifamily are really good. My buddies invest in short-term rentals downtown Charleston, they're spending like $3 million on a short-term rental, and they're getting massive amounts of depreciation on those.
So if I'm owning something and for the first time, haven't ever done accelerated depreciation, what does my toolbox look like? Who are the people I need to know to help me with that?
Dude, that's a great question. Let me get you guys the contact.
Is it an account?
It was a Go Abundance member.
Okay.
John Wamberg that was like, dude, you got to use my accelerated depreciation guide for single families. There's the study on like a big property that's over 500 grand. So for my office building was 2.5 million. That study is going to cost $10,000 to $12,000. You can do single families though for like $650 each, because they don't have to fly in, they don't have to take pictures of everything, and the guidelines are just a lot less when the property is less than $500,000. So there's a company that did. I'm just looking for them. There's a company that did those for us. Mm-hmm. And it was $650 each instead of $2,500 or $5,000 or $10,000 each.
Cool.
But if you do have a really expensive property, there's no way around it. You're going to have to pay at least 10 grand to do that study.
Okay. So maybe that's something you can share on the chat page when you find it.
You got it, man.
That'd be a great resource for it. Hey, I see our favorite Florida fisherman showing up on my screen here. What's up, Dr. Hale?
I sincerely apologize. I had it written for next Friday in my day planner and took my dad and son out for their birthday fishing.
Dude, Rick, you should not have shown up if you're out with your dad and your son fishing right now. What are you doing?
I'm apologizing because I love you, brother. You're the best. And I appreciate that Sean is talented and equally capable, not more. So I'm grateful for an amazing team. And again, my apologies.
What you catching?
Whatever we call it. We call it a mackerel. We've got some blue runners, a couple of mangrove snappers. It's been a good morning. We're waiting on the big one though.
You looking for a tarpon?
Not here. We're hoping redfish or maybe a snook. Those are the 2 big popular fish here.
Nice, man. Well, hey, enjoy the fishing, dude.
I'm going to listen in, but I'm going to let Sean just run with it. Clearly, you guys are rocking it. I heard you talking about cost seg and some other tax advantages with investment properties. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. You're the best.
See you, dude.
Right on.
All right. Thank you.
Looking good. So Matt, are you looking at anything? So right now, obviously, you're staying in the flipping realm. You look. What do you get? What else would you do with a pile of cash? What other avenues?
Yeah,
what avenues are
donate it?
What's that?
Like give it to worthy causes.
Yeah.
Make a difference in the world.
What's your difference? What's your worthy cause?
Yeah, Make-A-Wish South Carolina is I'm on the board for Make-A-Wish, so we're big supporters of that organization. And then every month we go volunteer at a different charity in town, and I donate to that charity monthly. And then we've created like our own charity. So we've got a prayer group here at the office, and People send in prayer requests from all over the place. And every month we look at it, we say, hey, is there any prayer requests that we could actually like make a difference with finances? So that's some of the ways that we're, giving back to people that we, are directly connected to. And being connected to that Make-A-Wish organization, man, is like, it's awesome. I've got 4 kids under the age of 8. And just hearing the stories about the families that are spending their time in the hospital where their kids are fighting for their life, and nothing makes you more grateful for just breathing than being connected to an organization like that. So yeah, we're pretty big on that. The other thing I'm doing is I'm writing a book called How to Get Out of a Bad Mood. And I've got the Good Moods podcast. So I think that there's so many people right now struggling with mental health. And my goal is to just make a difference in that area anywhere that I can, like help people understand that your mood's in your control and it's not the external environment that's doing it, it's you. And if you get into a good mood, you have good results anyway. And if you're in a bad mood, you got really bad results. So let's get in good moods.
Right. So the Good Mood podcast, is that what it's called if I Google you?
So it's launching April 4th, and it's the Good Moods show. And I'm definitely going to have my man, Hale, on that show, because that guy is like the guy that's in the best mood of anyone I've ever met. Hale is my hero.
We have him now as a title of CEO, which is actually Chief Energy Officer, which is really in the sweet spot for sure, right? And we've all been fortunate. Now he's back.
He popped on here. He's like fishing. He just caught a mackerel. He's got his sunglasses around his neck. That dude is awesome. Rick, I love you, man.
I love you too, brother.
Rick, talk to us about energy, man. Chief Energy Officer, you seem to be successful at it.
About energy?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's set up. It's every day. If you wake up and you work your way through savers, I think Hal Elrod's kind of got it figured out, where you work through scribing and affirmations and visualizations, and then you do some exercising, you eat well, and you hydrate. I mean, little things are big things. When you feel good, you tend to behave better, and little things, they flow off it's like a coating of Teflon when you start your day right.
Yeah, so, dude, that's a chapter in the book. I actually was just writing that one about the miracle morning.
It's strong.
So now, what was your connection to that? Like, how did you get into the good mood?
Man, kind of a God thing. I always would just like get this kind of feeling that I was going to write a book, and I was going to write a book about how like God and the entire world worked. And I'm like, man, that is such a huge topic. And I'm like, man, how am I going to do that? But it wasn't like I was like, had this desire to do it. It was kind of like my future self was pulling me that way. Like it was already my destiny. And then one morning I was doing my miracle morning. It was 4:40 in the morning, and I'm up and I'm reading a book, and in the book I'm reading, because that's one of the savers is reading. Yeah. And the book is like, man, you got to make an impact in the world. You got to, like, if you've achieved for yourself, you got to do something that helps other people. And it's this idea that the only work that is eternal is work that is helping other people, because all the money we get, all the houses we build, all the things I flip, they're going to turn to dust. In 200 years, no one will remember who the best realtor was in Atlanta. In fact, who was the #1 realtor in Atlanta in 1987?
Yeah. In 2 weeks, they might not remember that.
Who cares, right? Who won the Super Bowl in
Hale.
1979? It probably was Rick Hale.
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, dude, you do know. Okay. There you go, man. Are you a Steelers fan?
Super Bowl guy.
Oh, you're a Super Bowl guy. Yeah. But the point is that none of this shit's relevant.
Right.
And in 100 years, nobody cares that the Pittsburgh Steelers won in 1979. In 500 years, who the hell are the Pittsburgh Steelers? In 2,000 years, nobody even knew that you existed anymore, right? And then at some point, I don't know how many years it is, the earth is going to be exploded by the sun. But there are things that are eternal, and it's our soul. And so if our soul is eternal, then the only work we can do in this world that will go with us is the work where we talk to other human beings and help them grow and progress. And that was like what I was reading in this book. And said, what are you going to do to serve the world? And so I write down on this piece of paper, what am I going to do to serve the world? And it's the only time in my life I ever got like an answer back. And I heard this voice in the room, and it was like, write a book. And I looked around and I'm like, what should I write it about? And there was not an answer to that. And I was like, okay, shit. All right, I'll write a book. So I wrote that down, and I'm like, I don't know what to write about. And so I went to this GoBundance event, and I was skiing. I can't remember what town we were in, but we were skiing. I get on the chairlift, and next to me on the chairlift is this guy named Tucker Max, who's a 4-time best-selling author of some pretty raunchy books. I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell is one of his books. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, dude, I read your books or listened to them on my way to spring break in college, and you're hilarious. He's like, yeah, that was my younger self. I was kind of a party animal. I've changed a lot since then. And so we were talking about his growth, and I'm like, what are you up to now, man? He's like, oh, I help people publish their own book. I'm like, crazy. I have this note that I have to write a book. So he's like, what are you going to write it about? I'm like, I have no idea yet. And he said, dude, show up to my company, come to my workshop. And so I signed up, and then the topic, the Good Mood Show, just kind of came to me.
So tell me, what have you learned about writing a book? I think there's a lot of people on here that could write some books. So
yeah,
share us some hard-learned lessons.
Yeah, Scribe Media, SCRIBE. That's Tucker Max's company, and they have got the process like freaking nailed. You can actually just buy his book on Amazon, Scribe, and it'll teach. You can self-publish. He tells you everything you have to do to self-publish. Or you can hire them, and they've got editors, and they've got the whole process laid out. So I'll tell you that their process is pretty sweet, and I never knew how to write a book. The first thing you do is you outline you just write each chapter. Like, okay, all right, I'm going to create my table of contents. Then you create bullet points for each chapter. Right? So that sounds kind of intuitive. And then you start writing, and you never read it. You just start, and you just write and write and write and write and write and write, and you're not allowed to edit at all. Even if it's garbage, you're like, oh man, I'll clean that up later. Because there's a difference between the creative process and the editing process. The creative process is like, I think, right brain, so super creative. The editing process is left brain, like really logical. And those two brains don't really talk to each other. So you just want to get out the whole book in creativity, and then you go back and they do this, what they call the sit on the hands read. You have to print your book. And I haven't done this yet because I'm like a week away from finishing my first draft. And I'm going to take it to a coffee shop without a pen. And you have to read the whole book, even if it's garbage, without touching it or editing it or changing anything. So you can see the totality of what you wrote. And after that point, you're like, okay, I see what's good. I see what's not good. And then you go in and start making big chunk edits and rearranging the book. And then from there, you just keep fine tuning it.
So for you, so start stream of conscious. I'm just going to get it all out of my brain and somewhere. Then I have to go back.
Well, I mean, first you start with this table of contents, right, okay, and a general set of bullets, like, so you know that there is some structure and it's not just like stream of conscious.
Yeah. So for each bullet point, then you go kind of stream of conscious.
Yeah. Right. And then it, like, the book kind of morphs from there. So yeah, and like they said that the book you'll finish with is going to be vastly different than the book you started with. And that was definitely true for me.
So tell me about that. Where did you start? Like, what changed? Where did you start? And what did you learn in that changing process? Man,
what's crazy is I'm like, I am definitely not going to talk about the eternal nature of our soul in this book, because like a lot of people have religious trauma. I'm one of them who came up in the Catholic Church, and I'm like, a lot of people just, they hear religion and God and that kind of stuff, they get really like they turn off. And I'm just going to talk about the miracle morning. I'm going to talk about setting goals, achieving goals, like doing vision boards, and like feeling good by going out and achieving. And then what happened is I got to chapter 8, and I just wrote this whole chapter about eternity. And I was like, oh shit, this is like the crux of the whole book. And so that became chapter 2. And then I scrapped everything I had written and started a whole new book based around that. because the reality is our bad moods come from our survival ego. The ego is like trying to survive all the time. So the ego is like, okay, if somebody like hurts me, I've got to get super angry and get back at them. Or the ego feels like it's not good enough, and that's, you know, shame. Or the ego feels like we deserve punishment because we did something wrong, and that's guilt. And the good moods don't come from the ego. The good moods come from transcending the ego and realizing that you are in fact a soul that lives forever, and you don't have to worry about all this survival stuff.
So you started with a book that was clearly not about spirituality, that is now solely about spirituality.
And then it's solely about, and that's freaking crazy, right? But then
So
that's what I was saying, is that I kept getting these nudges throughout my whole life. I was going to write this book about God and the way that God works and the world works. And I'm like, I don't know shit about that. You know, I was in Sunday school and catechism, and I didn't like any of it. And I'm definitely not going to write a book about that. And then like, that was always my future self just pulling me to what was actually going to happen anyway.
So does that mean like once this one's a bestseller, you now go back to the other chapters and you have 8 other books to write by going deep on those?
Yeah, I mean, look, anger could be its own book. Like I've spent a lot of time on anger. Pride could be its own book. Pride is such a negative mood, and I spent a lot of time in pride. A lot of the world does.
You mentioned part of it. You mentioned goal setting.
Yeah.
As part of the thing you wrote. What does goal setting look like in your world?
Yeah, the more often I can get clarity on my goals, the better.
Okay.
I mean, people are always like, hey, what's the thing in between you and where you want to go? And my answer is always, when I think about it, I just don't know exactly where I want to go. Otherwise I would be there. Because there gets to be a point where you realize you're so powerful that anything you set your mind to, you're going to create. So then you just have to figure out, well, what do I want? Because then I'll go create it. So
Well, that's
for
the
me,
challenge.
yeah, for me, it's just, okay, I have to schedule time. I have to schedule time to sit down and go through goal setting. And Rick Hale took me through a goal setting process that I loved. It was the Wheel of Life.
Yeah.
We were at his lake house, and it was like freaking awesome. I think I made some life-changing decisions that night. It was like midnight. I was drinking coffee in his living room, and he had each area set out. Rick, do you want to tell us about that process?
I mean, it's simply identifying that we're a holistic being, and that by not paying attention to all aspects, and at some point you're going to leave something behind, and your wheel won't roll. You know, anytime there's a flat spot in the wheel of life, you're going to feel it when that comes back around. And so the idea is to create awareness in your goal setting around 12 categories, from health to fitness to romance to travel and adventure. And obviously there's business and financial goals as well. So we had an amazing roundtable around it where a dozen or so of us just shared our fails, our wins, and, you know, and we kind of top graded each of us in our own way in terms of perspective around what a win looks like. And half the battle is recognizing your true potential. And the easiest way to do it is break it down into bite-sized pieces, and then have open, honest conversations with high-minded people like you.
That's exactly what we did. And it freaking crushed. You know, I think the relationship piece that night was like the most important one for me. If I remember, John Wanberg like pointed me in the direction of this book called like The Keys to the Kingdom. And I went and got it. And it was about the path of a man, and about how a man has to go out and conquer, and a man has to go out and like prove himself before he can become a king. And then there's a point in time when a man becomes a king and he no longer has to go conquer and prove himself. And it's a natural progression of every male that you kind of have to follow this. And so that came out of that discussion about relationships and how to be a really good man.
Interesting. So circle back, repeat that again for me. What's the highest level of being the king?
Yeah, once you're the king, you no longer have to prove.
That's what you said. Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to prove, you don't have to go be the best. You don't have to be the #1 realtor in Atlanta, the #1 realtor in Charleston. Like, there's nothing to prove. You already know you're great. You already know your worth. And at that point, the king just takes care of his people. Like, a really good king is a servant. So a really good king is a servant to his queen and to his children, and then to the people of his community. And that's it was just a really, I recognized that when I read the book, it was a couple of years ago, I was in that, okay, build it, build it, build it, build it. You have to go conquer as a man. Like you just have to, it's a piece of it. And I then also showed like, hey, what the evolution would be. At some point you realize there's nothing to conquer.
So that's a change. That's a whole different perspective. So what's it like when you go from, I mean, the cool thing about setting goals is we know where we're going. Like we're pointing at something, we got a bullseye. When you become this altruistic giver, the bullseye sort of, you know, it gets a little cloudy. So what was that like for you going through that process? What'd you learn?
Yeah, no, I'm still learning it. So I'm still setting goals for the company. We've got, I've got a big team. It's a real estate team. So we've got 60 real estate agents who work here on the team. And last year we sold 383 million. And I set the target that we would sell 500 million this year. And, you know, it's still a goal. But I also think that a company without like a vision, just like a person without a vision shall perish, a company without a vision shall perish too. So you got to know where the company is going. So the company's got its vision and I'm here to support it and serve it. I realize the company's bigger than me and that 100 different families rely on this company to be successful. So I've got to be a good steward of my position as CEO. And then I set some goals for my family and some goals, just same as I learned from Rick. You know, I've got goals for my children. I've got goals for my time with not for them. I got goals for the way that I interact with them, right? I've got goals for the way I interact with my wife. One of the things I learned was like these one-on-one times. So my wife and I take a one-on-one trip every year away from the 4 kids. And then every year I take a trip with one kid, one of my children, and they pick where we go. And every year my wife takes one of them too. And then every 5 years we do a 2-on-1 trip with one child. And that's just from goal setting, you know, but those moments are the time where we get so tight and so connected.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about your journey from going from that to king of 60 people on your team and how you learned that and how you put it together? And
yeah, man, I don't know. I really don't know. I could just say that the transition out of pride was a big transition. So actually, I do know. There was a book called Loving What Is by Byron Katie. And Byron Katie said, like, she's got this 4-question process that every time you get like all upset at somebody, you ask these questions and you realize that the person you're judging, they're upset about, you are being that exact person you're judging in this moment. And then the person that you're judging about like being so awful, also in this exact moment is also being really nice and kind, and you're just choosing not to see it. So her work, I studied everything she did. You can just YouTube video Byron Katie, and she like takes people who are like so hurt and so sad and so angry and so pissed off and so want revenge, and then she gets them to see that other person is fine and that they're the ones who are freaking out. And so that was this transition for me. You know, I was like fighting and climbing and clawing and fighting and climbing and clawing. And all of a sudden I started to realize that there was no one to fight.
interesting. Can you walk us through the 4 questions?
Yeah. So like, it's really helpful if you picture someone that hurt you. Like think of someone who stole from you. Think of someone who like, usually someone close to you, like a parent who harmed you that wasn't that cool, or one of your best friends that like did something that like really harmed you. And if you put yourself in that situation where you're judging this person super hard, like Sean, what would some words be for you about somebody who harmed you or stole from you that you cared about? And they like totally broke your trust.
You know, I've lived a pretty blessed life that I can't think of anybody when you say that, but I would think like that they were selfish, or that they were, you know, their ego got in the way, or that, you know, they were just uncaring.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I just wrote down those 3 things. They were selfish, their ego got in the way, and they were uncaring. And then you can do the 4 questions on all 3 of those statements. So the first one I would choose would be they are uncaring. So when you're super hurt and you're like, man, that asshole was uncaring. I can't believe it. You look at it, you say, okay, they're uncaring. Is that true? That's the question 1.
Yeah.
So what would you say?
Which could be they were uncaring in that moment, but as a person, maybe they're not uncaring.
Yeah, so question 1 is usually a yes. Like our ego would say, F yeah, they were uncaring. Do you see what they did? You know, like they slept with my wife. Like how caring is that? Question 2 is, can I absolutely know with 100% certainty that they are uncaring? And question 2 is always a no, because the only way to know with absolute certainty anything is to get inside someone's mind and know exactly what they were thinking, and you can't do that. So question 2 creates just a little bit of a shift in perspective of, man, okay, well, maybe I don't know with absolute certainty this person is a total douche. And then question 3 is, who am I in the world when I'm consumed with this thought, this person's uncaring? And you're like, oh man. So for me, when I'm like super consumed with somebody who I feel hurt me, I'm like I don't want to play with my kids, like ignore my wife. I'm like so sad. I don't even want to work. And I'm not uplifting people in my company. I'm like my worst self. Right. And then I might even snap at somebody, right? If I'm like super hurt, my child comes into the room and is like, Daddy, can you help me with this? I'm like, not right now. Right. So you realize that you're uncaring when you're consumed with this person being uncaring. And that's the turnaround. The turnaround is, who would I be if this thought couldn't exist anymore? So if you could never, ever even have the thought this person is uncaring, who would you be? Well, shit, if I wasn't consumed with this, I'd be playing with my kids right now. Like I'd be cooking dinner with my wife with the music on. We'd be dancing probably. I would show up to work and be such an inspiration and help so many people if I wasn't consumed with this one thought, this person's uncaring. And then she says, all right, well, let's look at the opposite. And so you do the opposite. What's the opposite of this person's uncaring?
They're loving.
Yeah. So you write, this person is loving, but you would write their name, like Jack is loving. And then she makes you come up with 3 different examples of why Jack is a loving person. And, you know, you can come up with it like, I bet he loves his mom. Actually, you know what? There was a time when I was like really hurt and Jack showed up at my house just to take me out and help me out. That was a really loving gesture. And then you come up with a 3rd one. And all this does is it just gets your mind to unravel this one harmful thought. Jack is an uncaring a-hole. And when you do this enough times, you start to see that every thought that you're consumed with is only hurting you, and it's not hurting the world. Like it's not hurting anyone else. It's not hurting Jack. It's not making your life better. It's not making the people's life at work better. It's not making your family better. This one thought is hurting everybody. And you start to figure out how to drop them all. The other turnaround, so you got the opposite. The other turnaround is to the self. And you have to come up with 3 reasons why you are the exact thing you're judging Jack about. You have to say, I'm uncaring. Okay, well, how am I uncaring? Well, right now, I want to go punch Jack in the face. So that's not a super caring and loving way of feeling, right? Right now, my kids are walking in asking for me to love them, and I'm telling them to get the F out of the room. Right now, my company needs me to care, and I don't care about them. I'm uncaring in so many ways right now. And that's Byron Katie's work. And man, like it's a really huge concept. And I read every book she wrote just because I really wanted to master this. And once I mastered that, like you're untouchable. You are unfazable. There's nothing that can ever happen where you like want to be consumed with hate and revenge and sorrow.
So it gets you to do the 180 on.
Yeah.
Become out a better person. Awesome. Well, I want to be respectful. I know we got about 9 minutes left. I do want to see for folks on the call. Anybody have any questions, comments? What'd you guys hear? Connie, you're getting ready to go. Before you go, you're a Katie fan. Give us a little unmute. Share your thoughts on that.
Well, you know me, I'm always about the spiritual aspect of everything. So how I found her was that during a time in my life when I was going through a situation that I was just like, I was really down in the dumps about. And that's not a natural place for me to be. So in order to become more self-aware, I just started reading some of her books and started listening to some of, she gets interviewed on a lot of podcasts that I listen to. And it's really, I mean, if you know her story, she was just at a point in her life where her house was just in disarray. She wouldn't get up in the morning, blah, blah, blah. And it's really about bringing everything back to yourself and owning things in your life that have happened and learning from that. And I think Matt touched on that with the 4 questions, because it really does all come back to you. And the sooner that we're able to get that in our personal experiences, then absolutely it works in our business, because we don't take things personally, and we also are good people. And I like what Matt said about, it's not about I think that's one of the problems in our industry is it's always, everybody wants to have their face on everything, and that's more important than what you're actually doing. That's the way it appears. And I think that some people that are inexperienced, they get into the industry, get caught up in that, and they lose a lot of traction, and they lose a lot of what they could be doing, trying to play that role. And Byron helps you get back to what's real. And then as you bring that into your own life, it cuts out the noise, and you can go back to organically growing every aspect of your life, including your business. That's what
beautifully said, Constance. 1000% agree. Yeah. So if you're not hung up on any hurt, then you can always just be your best.
Absolutely.
That is it. So as soon as you master that, and no one can hurt you anymore, because you realize you're the only one that hurts yourself, that means you get to show up as your best self every day, and your best self absolutely can crush at work. And that's what happened to us. We grew 400% in 5 years.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Matt, do you and Constance, y'all know each other?
It's funny, Matt, I've been doing business in Charleston back and forth for about 7 years, but I moved here last year. And one of my clients was like, who is that Matt O'Neill guy? Because I see his signs everywhere. He must be really tired. And I just smiled and I said, he's really tired, or he's really, really smart, and he's leveraging. So we know what the answer to that is. And,
hey, I'm so glad to meet you. It's good to know you.
You as well.
Well, you guys need to connect. Constance has been a
Absolutely.
long-time leader for us. So now y'all have a great connection that you can follow up on.
I am looking forward to it.
I will reach out separately.
Awesome.
Okay.
It's great to see you.
I have to go. Thank you.
It's great to
Good
see you.
You too. Bye.
And
Brett
to Matt's
Caldwell.
point,
Oh, go
can
ahead.
you hear me? You'll only attract who you are and what you're becoming in the journey you're on. And so, to Matt's credit, and man, in a brilliant way, exercise the reality that if you don't solve the riddle in your heart and mind, you're not going to attract the kind of people that are on that same path and journey. And when you do connect with those, you become unstoppable.
Dude, that is so spot on. And what's crazy is we had this massive shedding too, because when I was in the emotion of pride, I attracted all these other people who were also super prideful. And then when I started to get out of that emotion, all those people started to reject themselves, which was kind of cool, because then it opened up space to attract the people that were more in my wavelength now.
That's awesome.
Brett Caldwell, good morning, buddy. As a leader of a group here, what have you heard today?
Honestly, I'm dying to go check into that Scribe Media. That looks really cool. I can't tell you, I've had thoughts of books over the years and stuff like that, and I get caught up in my own head around what would I really say or how would I put it together. And the thought of having to do a free flow and then sit on your hands and read the entire thing
Yeah.
just sounds amazingly painful and all at the same time. But I heard that, and but the bigger thing I heard in that was who you are as a person, this king mentality, this natural, there is no ceiling. And even when you feel like you reached a ceiling, how does that turn you into a more humble person? I really enjoyed the interview today, and I thank Sean for stepping in and taking the lead. So thank you for everything you did today.
Yeah, hey, I came in to listen, and I was glad I got to drive the direction of it, Matt. I got a lot from it too, and I think I'm one of those people that's always thought of writing a book, and I feel like I walks with some concrete stuff to move forward on. So
Yeah, hire Scribe, man. I'm telling you, they are legit. It is real. What Brett just said is the number one reason that you won't publish your book, is that you were like, what would I say and would it be any good? Every single person who ever thought of writing a book has that fear. And the number one thing that would prevent you from helping the world is that fear. So they are so good. They do a 3-day workshop and they spend 2.5 days on you getting over that limiting belief that would keep the world from your greatness. So I mean, you could try to do it yourself, but that fear will block you because it blocks everybody.
Which is exactly why we haven't written a book. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
There you go.
right on.
Yes,
April
I took-
4th, we have access to the Big Mood Show.
The Good Mood Show on Apple Podcasts and everywhere podcasts are posted, April 4th.
All right, I'm gonna keep an eye out for it. I'm a big podcast guy, and thank you for sharing your talent, share your time, your energy, your inspiration with us today. We're always very respectful and try to end a minute ahead of time. So thank you, Matt. It's great.
Oh,
to get
man.
to meet you.
Sean, thank you, dude. You crushed it. And
Yeah,
Rick,
you
thank you
did.
for having me on, man.
Thanks for making me look good, guys. Sorry again, but I think it was supposed to be, man. There are no accidents.
Sounds good. See you guys.
Right on.
All right, take care.